Is the Whoop strap worth it or just a waste of money if you're a strength athlete? I've been competing in strongman for the past 11 years, including 2 top 5 place finishes at the Canadian Natural Strongman Championship, as well as coaching other clients. I'm very interested in whatever we can do as strength athletes to improve our recovery as well as perform our very best. The Whoop is a fitness and health tracker, much like an Apple Watch or Fitbit, but with a little more specialized features and measurements included for performance and recovery purposes. Typically it's worn on your wrist, but there's other types of clothing that can also insert the Whoop so that you don't have necessarily something on your wrist. One of the advantages that we'll talk about in a bit when it comes to strength training. Now, at some point in your journey as a strength athlete, if you want to perform your very best, you're likely going to have to include some form of objective measurement of your recovery and performance, and not just rely on things like RPE and what you subjectively experience. That's where things like the Whoop come into play as these objective tools that can help to look at what your strain level is and your recovery and sleep scores. And I think everybody at some point in their journey is going to need to include some form of objective measurements in order to get to that next level. Even if you use a tool like Whoop or an Apple Watch or Oura Ring for a short period of time, it's going to help you to learn something more about your body and your performance. Now, recent data from the Australian Institute of Sport has shown that the Whoop is the most accurate consumer device on the market as far as health trackers go. And this is something that kind of goes back and forth with the advantages of the Oura Ring, which is also a very accurate device. But this new data suggests that the Whoop is now outperforming it, which is very promising in their direction as far as whatever type of athlete you are, maybe wanting to try out the Whoop rather than the Oura Ring. So by using a device like this that's got a high degree of accuracy in its measurements, you start to make more informed decisions about your training and recovery rather than just off of subjective experience alone. And this can make a really big difference in pushing your performance and your training to the next level. It's a lot like measuring out food for a diet. A lot of people have no clue how much food they're actually eating until they start to measure and count calories. Not that this has to be the long-term goal, but for a short term, it gives you some insight into better awareness about portion sizes. And the same thing goes when you look at these objective measurements for your recovery scores. It starts to give us a better sense of self-awareness, or that interoception of what's going on within our body. Now, looking at what the Whoop measures, there's 3 key scores that it really simply breaks down for you on a daily basis and develops over time based on the algorithm and your own individual body's performance and recovery. So there's the strain score. It gives you a score on your sleep, and it also gives you a score on your overall recovery or readiness. With the sleep and the recovery scores, I think anybody can find this very valuable because it's going to show you some data on your sleep, which can also be especially helpful for us strength athletes that maybe deal with sleep apnea or other poor sleep performance, because we can get some insights like our blood oxygen levels as we sleep and whether we're actually getting deep, restful sleep. When we aren't, it's an indication that maybe we should go for a sleep test and check if we've got sleep apnea or other sleep disorders. And the recovery score takes into account heart rate variability, which is an important factor for how stressed our nervous system is, and finding that better balance with HRV or heart rate variability and our recovery can really help us to push our performance in each individual training session to its absolute limit. Now, with the strain score, it's where it's a little bit less useful for strength athletes because it's heavily weighted towards cardiovascular activities. So if you do like a longer ruck or hike, or even if you're doing any sort of endurance training, it's going to show you a much higher strain than maybe your 2-hour session doing heavy lifting where your heart rate doesn't go up all that much. There is something that I think is valuable for strength training here. For one, in strongman particularly, we do have to have a lot of good cardiovascular endurance for the events so that we can push through that 60 or 90-second upper time limit that we often see. And I have found that as I've improved my cardio, it's helped me to recover better, to perform my best in subsequent sets as my heart rate comes back down to a more normal range much quicker. Now, this isn't to say that the Whoop's going to help you with that so much as allow you to observe trends over time, which may suggest when you want to increase your cardio performance so that you can keep on doing your very best in strength training as well. Now, because strength training is so heavily nervous system based, I do find that these recovery measures are highly predictive of how my performance is going to be in the gym. Something I want to mention here though is I personally don't like to go into a training session kind of preconditioned to believe that it's not going to be optimal because of what my Whoop's telling me or any other tracker is telling me performance wise. So I usually check my scores afterwards and then I'll make adjustments to my training for the rest of the week or however I need to add in extra recovery afterwards rather than making adjustments to training that I've already planned out and trying to still go off of subjective feel. I think that's an important kind of integration of this objective and subjective experience of training. Now, a couple of thoughts around the Whoop versus the Oura Ring, because a lot of people are wondering, should I get the Whoop or should I get the Oura Ring? So I originally went with an Oura Ring because in the past they didn't have a membership structure. Now that there's a membership structure to the Oura Ring as well as to the Whoop, it seems like there's less of a comparison on cost alone. So some of these other factors are much more important, I think, for strength athletes considering one versus the other. The first off is wearing the ring on your finger is completely out of the question for training. So you're not going to get any input about your training specifically if you're using an Oura Ring. You'll still get those recovery and sleep data, but you're not going to really be able to use it unless you want to lose a finger during training. So with the Whoop, you can wear it on your wrist. I've even found that under wrist wraps, it works fine on pressing days, but because they also sell different pieces of clothing, so you could wear it on a pair of like Under Armour style boxer shorts or with like an armband so that is not around your wrist for pressing days. This gives you much more options so you can also still see that heart rate data and other things around strain with your training sessions. That's a big advantage, I think, for the Whoop for strength athletes. And a lot of guys with larger hands probably can't even wear the ring comfortably anyway, or they max out the largest size of the Oura Ring, which isn't going to work. When starting out with tracking your health and performance with some sort of external device, I suggest going with just one thing. If you've already got something like an Apple Watch, make use of the numbers on that, but don't try to look and compare across multiple devices. I've found that there's a lot of inconsistency and it's better to get the sense over time of what one device is telling you rather than trying to make sense of multiple sets of data at one time. And because the Whoop is now reported as the most accurate wearable device, I think that it's a great bet to go with that as your starting point. And if you want to get 1 month free as well as the Whoop 4.0 for free, you can click the link in the description down below to get started right away. If you've used the Whoop before or any other activity trackers for strength training particularly, be sure to leave a comment down below and let me know what your experience has been. Thank you for watching the video, and until the next one, find your flow.